So the room for diplomacy is shrinking. Military drills have begun once again. Evacuation plans have been approved. There's no consensus, no compromise, and no commitments. So where exactly are things headed now? Is war inevitable in Ukraine? To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by our correspondents from 4 capitals that are shaping this conflict. Julia Chapman with us from Moscow, Nick Harper from Washington, D.C., Laura Makin-Isherwood from London, and Ollie Barrett from Brussels. Hello to all of you from Kiev. Julia, we'll start with you. Russia and Belarus have commenced joint military exercises. What can you tell us about these drills?
Well, as you've said, these are very substantial drills with many Russian troops taking part of them in them, upwards of 30,000 by some estimates, a very strong contingent of the Russian military, the largest in Belarus since the end of the Cold War, when, of course, these were all one country under the Soviet Union. So certainly there are concerns about the numbers of troops taking part in these drills. They compare with those that took place last year, where there were joint exercises between Russia and Belarus. This is about 3 times the size of that Russian military contingent. The Russian military, the Russian Ministry of Defense says that these are simply preparatory exercises. They will be simulating a possible attack against Belarus, and these are not an offensive set of drills. But certainly there are concerns in the West that the capabilities being built up in Belarus right now could also pose a threat to Ukraine.
Nick, Joe Biden has approved a plan to get Americans out of Ukraine in case of an invasion. And he's also received a phone call from the French president last night. Tell us about the developments in Washington, D.C.
Well, that's right. The White House approving that Pentagon-driven plan. This is all about the US troops that have been sent over to Poland. They will be helping American citizens who want to leave Ukraine. Now, under the rules, they can't enter Ukraine itself. Instead, they'll be based in neighbouring Poland. That's where they'll remain. But they're going to set up border checkpoints on the Poland-Ukraine border, as well as temporary housing. So any American citizens who are trying to flee Ukraine and leave via those border posts will get the assistance of those US troops. We're told about 1,700 US troops have left the United States, heading to Poland, and they will be stationed there in that support capacity, providing logistics. The White House and the Pentagon making it clear that this will not be an evacuation operation. They don't plan to go to Ukraine to try and fly out any American citizens who are there. And the US president has spoken to his French counterpart as well, part of those ongoing efforts for the US to remain connected to Europe. There are also suggestions that the US president may on Friday hold a phone call with leaders of various European nations and NATO, all part of that united front, trying to show that they have the similar message, the same way forward to try and counter that Russian aggression.
Laura, the United Kingdom is readying about 1,000 troops for humanitarian support if Ukraine is invaded. Tell us about the threat perception in London.
Well, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that if this is a dangerous moment and that it would be an absolute disaster if Russia did invade Ukraine. The Prime Minister has been in Brussels this morning speaking with the head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, the Alliance's Secretary General. They had around a 35-minute conversation there this morning discussing the situation. Of course, the UK has now pledged to put a further 1,000 troops on standby to be there in support should a humanitarian disaster unfold in Ukraine if Russia did invade the country. But of course, this comes at the same time that the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has headed to Moscow for talks with her counterpart there, Sergei Lavrov. They've been in talks there. It's understood that the Russian Foreign Minister has said that it's essentially the West escalating tensions, that the West is not listening to Russia and their requests for troops to be moved away from Eastern Europe. The West, however, the UK and other allies in NATO are standing firm.
Ollie, as Laura pointed out, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has landed in Brussels and he'll be visiting Poland, he'll go to Lithuania and then Germany next. Tell us what he's up to.
Yeah, he's left Brussels actually. He was here earlier today having those talks with Jens Stoltenberg to say that Britain stands behind the military alliance and is able to offer more support to it if needed. the trip to Poland is part of the process, really, to try and show that the UK is able to show support to some of its allies in the Eastern European region, some of those countries particularly that border Ukraine. The UK and Poland, their relations have actually been getting very much stronger in recent years, and again, this is a demonstration, London believes, of that close relationship between the UK and Poland. Boris Johnson will also visit some of the British troops already stationed inside Poland, and on the same day that his Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is in Moscow. This is all part of the attempts from London to show that it can show support militarily, in a humanitarian way if it's required, but also trying to further put the squeeze on Moscow. And we do expect that in London today, legislation will be put forward to Parliament which would allow the UK to strengthen the sanctions that it might be able to level against Moscow in the event of an invasion.
Laura, Nick, Ollie, Julia, thanks very much for bringing us those updates. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.